Assalamualaikum and good afternoon everyone. We're from Harmony Entertainment and today we'll share about workplace and professional ethics. Before we go deeper into the topic, let's get to know each other, shall we? Alright, I'm Ameylina and I am the CEO of the company and I'll share about the definition of ethics, workplace ethics, and professional ethics. I'll also let you see the work culture across the countries where we will see how the Western and Asian work culture are. In a bit, let's meet the others. Alright, my secretary MIZA FARHANAH will talk about theories related to work ethics where she will share on adab and Islamic ethics as well as the 4 ethical approaches with regard to ethics. We also have one of our artists joining in on our sharing regarding work ethics, AIMAN SYAZANI, a very hardworking celebrity of ours, will share on professional accountability and professional integrity. Guess I can see how professional he is, isn't it? Anyway, one of our company mottos is to be inclusive, no one left behind. So we managed to get one of our janitors, NADZIRA, to talk about issues in integrity. Because you see, we work in this field, janitors work in their field, but they have their eyes and ears, right? And they're everywhere. So why not get some input from her? Last but not least, good management is one of the keys to the success of Harmony Entertainment. Our artists are managed by great managers who contribute a lot to celebrities' career development, which is why we have Aiman Shazani's appointed manager, Nur AFIFAH, to share on issues in work ethics. You know, she follows him everywhere. She works in various settings and places. I'm sure we'll get juicy input from her, right? So now you know the theme. Let's get started. Alright, as I've mentioned previously, let's talk about what ethics is. Some years ago, sociologist Raymond Baumhart asked business people, "What does ethics mean to you?" Among their replies are, "Ethics has nothing to do with what my feelings tell me is right or wrong. Ethics has to do with my religious beliefs. Being ethical is doing what the law requires. Ethics consist of the standards of behavior our society accepts, and some said they don't know what ethics means." These answers pin ethics down with feelings, religions, law, society, but ethics is not tied down to any of those. Ethics is 2 things. Firstly, ethics refers to well-founded standards of right and wrong that prescribes what humans ought to be. That prescribes what humans ought to do, usually in terms of rights, obligations, benefits to society, fairness, or specific virtue. For example, ethics refers to those standards that impose the reasonable obligations to refrain from rape, stealing, murder, assault, slander, and fraud. Ethical standards also include those that enjoin virtues of honesty, compassion, and loyalty. And ethical standards include standards relating to rights such as the right to life, the right to freedom from injury, and the right to privacy. Secondly, ethics refers to the study and development of one's ethical standards. As mentioned above, feelings, laws, and social norms can contradict from what is ethical, so it is necessary to constantly examine one's standards to ensure that they are reasonable and well-founded. Ethics also means the continuous effort of studying our own moral beliefs and our moral conduct, and striving to ensure that we live up to standards that are reasonable and solidly based. In short, ethics, which is also called moral philosophy, is concerned with what is morally good and bad and morally right and wrong. Alright, now let's see these 2 types of ethics, workplace ethics and professional ethics. Firstly, workplace ethics. Work ethics is the ability to maintain proper moral values within the workplace. It is an attitude that shapes the way an individual performs its job duties with high moral standards. Work ethics is known as a transferable or soft skill. It is an inherent attitude that an individual possesses, and it allows him to make decisions and perform his duties with positive moral values that include elements like integrity, responsibility, high quality, discipline, humility, humble, and teamwork. An individual that possesses a positive work ethic will consider the moral implications of everything he does and will establish clear boundaries between what he considers appropriate and what he doesn't, according to his own values and principles. For instance, Goldwyn Shoes co-founder Mr. McManus recognizes strong work ethics on each individual that works for the company, and he values that even more than productivity or goal achievement. The 5 core values that the company practices are honesty, responsibility, punctuality, transparency, and proactivity. We can definitely see the importance of workplace ethics as it guarantees the success of a company, like Harmony Entertainment as well. And then we have professional ethics. Professional ethics are principles that govern the behavior of a person or group in a business environment. Like values, professional ethics provide rules on how a person should act towards other people and institutions in such an environment. Unlike values, professional ethics are often codified as a set of rules which a particular group of people use. This means that all those in a particular group will use the same professional ethics even though their values may be unique to each person. Take codes of conduct as an example. Professional codes of conduct draw on these professional ethical principles as the basis for prescribing required standards of behavior for members of a profession. They also seek to set out the expectations that the profession and society have of its members. The intention of codes of conduct is to provide guidelines for the minimum standard of appropriate behavior in a professional context. Codes of conduct sit alongside the general law of the land and the personal values of members of the profession. In short, professional ethics are the guiding principles that are to be followed by or expected to be followed by the people in any particular profession. Alright everyone, ethics, work ethics, professional ethics, we have to explore the work culture now to see the relationship between work culture and work ethics. And we'll be looking at some countries, Western countries and Asian countries, which are China and Japan. Let's get to it, and I'll share Malaysian's work culture here and there as well. The first aspect of work culture is the hierarchy or seniority system. In the Western workplace, your boss or supervisor will most likely tolerate and even encourage some form of office banter, the playful and friendly exchange of teasing remarks. However, modern-day Western workplaces tend to favor flatter organizational structures. Senior management may still enjoy the luxury of an office, but they will more than likely be very vocal about how proud they are of their open door policy. Management can usually be approached via a quick knock on their glass paneled wall, and most of the time they are happy to discuss any work or even personal problems with their staffs. In contrast, you will typically find many layers and levels within the organizations of a Chinese workplace. Everyone reports to a manager or a boss, and this is closely reflected in the office arrangement. The more senior the staff, the less you will see of them. Managers are often tucked away in their private offices, while the most senior figures might be absent altogether. There tends to be a greater level of respect for or fear for those in higher positions. For example, Chinese employees are much less likely to crack a joke or talk about their personal lives with their superiors. Okay, Japanese society places strong importance on the hierarchical relationship between a senior and a junior, known as the Nenko Juretsu system. This principle is one that permeates Japan's corporate culture, which places respect and value on seniority. For many years, Japanese companies also maintain a seniority-based wage and promotion system. This practice discouraged employees from changing jobs, as employees who left to join another firm would likely have to start from the bottom of the totem pole again from a lower salary. I think in Malaysia we have this seniority system, but then it's not that significant, or we also rely on the situations or occasions. For instance, semi-formal situations allow employers and employees to interact in a friendly manner, but formal occasions such as meetings will put a hold on the friendly act between them. The second aspect is the long working hours or overtime. Western workplaces are relatively laid back when it comes to working hours. Although America once had the ticket punching system, nowadays it tends to be all well and good as long as the job gets done. In most offices, you'll see staff working to the clock. With a mass exodus, almost everyone leaves at the same time at 5 or 6 p.m., save for those working on last-minute tasks. The Chinese work very hard to achieve and stand out from the crowd. It's pretty unusual to see employees leave the office immediately when their hours are done, and many will stay and put up with unpaid overtime in a bid to show willingness. While helping each other and working as a team is the norm, there is a delicate balancing act between that and wanting to impress the boss. As a result, many employees are keen to demonstrate their worth by taking on extra assignments and working beyond their contracted hours. Japan has some of the world's longest working hours. In fact, their work hours are such a significant issue that karoshi, a word that translates as death by overwork, is a legally recognized cause of death. The concept of passive endurance and active perseverance, also known as gaman and gambaru, is highly valued in Japanese culture and clearly reflected in the workplace. These extra hours are often unpaid. On top of that, many Japanese workers are infamous for not taking their paid leave for fear of inconveniencing their co-workers. Yeah. Well, in Malaysia, I believe we even work as we're going to bed, in a way that messages keep on coming, and employees are often expected to reply as soon as possible. And this needs to be avoided because it can cause burnout and overwork. Wow, that's long. Anyway, based on the previous information I've shared, the relationship between work culture and ethics is that the work culture guides employees when faced with ethical dilemmas. If the work culture counters what they are required to do ethically, employees may put the organization at risk by being unethical. For instance, clocking out early instead of the usual time that is set by the company can lead to workers being unethical with regard to honesty and punctuality. Alright, I've talked a lot. I'll pass the screen and mic to my secretary, MIZA FARHANAH. Thank you.
Oh, hi there. I'm Harmony Entertainment Secretary MIZA FARHANAH. It seems like our CEO, Miss Amy, is quite busy over there. I will probably get called out in a minute. But that's okay. Since I have some time, should I tell you about theories related to work ethics? Now, let's talk about the two theories related to the work ethics. The first one related with adab and Islamic ethics, and the second one is the four approaches, which are deontological class of ethics, utilitarianism class of ethics, ethical theories based on rights, and ethics based on virtue. Let's start with adab and Islamic ethic. So what is adab and Islamic ethic? Islamic manner or adab is one of the Islamic educational goals. According to Marwan 2000, it contains a comprehensive code that will result in good Islamic practitioner. And according to Al-Attas 1979, the loss of adab will cause the Muslim with dilemma, which later foster into confusion and error in knowledge, and later on it could also lead to the rise of unqualified leaders in Muslim community. In the Islamic education process, a teacher or educator has an important role in training Muslim youth to behave ethically as the first step. Therefore, the training of adab has been considered as an important duty for Muslim teachers as well as educators. And understanding on how educators or teachers are motivated towards a positive work ethics within school structure and tasks will not only affect the performance outcome of the teacher and educators, but it will also influence on the extent in which the school encourage a positive work ethics of the individual to benefit the organization. In the same way, the cultural self-representation theory can be associated with what Krennic and Kinnicky 1992 point out on ethical behavior in workplace. They suggested that religion and belief of or cultural influences have a perspective to enclosure individuals' ethical codes in workplace, which subsequently leading to the ethical behaviors. In other words, self-concept of individual correlates with the culture and their work practice, and it affects their work behavior accordingly. According to Rice 1999, Islam contains its own ethical system which offers specific guidelines for conducting business and work. According to Nick Mustasim, Nordin and Abdullah Sanusi 2006, when one has a close relationship with God, one's attitude and behavior would tend to be consistent with the rules and stipulation of the religion. Hence, on this basis, a person's commitment to his or her work ethics would be expected to be significantly related to their belief and behavior to the organization. Now, let's move on to the 4 ethical approaches. The first approaches will be the ontological class of ethics. The ontological class of ethics is an approach to ethics that judge the morality of an action based on the rightness or wrongness of the action itself, not on the consequences of the action. And the morality of the action is also based on a strong sense of duty and following rules. It means that people should adhere to their obligation and duties when engaged in decision making when ethics are in play. This means that a person will follow his or her obligation to another individuals or society because upholding one's duty is what is considered ethically correct. According to Emmanuel Hunt, deontology tells us that sometimes we have to act in the way we believe is ethically wrong because the outcome will be good. Now, let's take a look at the example. Shooting an intruder to protect your family. Killing a person is wrong, but the action happened because you want to protect your family, which is right. This is what I mean when I say a person will follow his or her obligation to another individuals or society, because upholding one's duty is what is considered ethically correct. He did what he did because to him he feels like it is his duty to protect his family, so he should be intruded. Another example would be telling white lies. Lying is considered wrong, even if it is to benefit or bring about better consequences. Remember, in deontology, an act is not good morally can actually lead to something good. Let's move on to the next approach, which is the utilitarianism class of ethics. Utilitarianism class of ethics is a theory of morality that advocates action that foster happiness or pleasure and oppose that action that cause unhappiness or harms. When direct towards making social, economic, or political decision, a utilitarian philosophy would aim for the betterment of the society as a whole. Utilitarian ethics theories are based on one's ability to predict the consequences of an action. To a utilitarian, the choice that yields the greatest benefit to the most people is the one is ethically correct. So there are two types of utilitarianism. The first one is act utilitarianism, and the second one is rule utilitarianism. Act utilitarianism means a person perform the acts that benefit the most people, regardless of personal feelings or the societal constraints such as laws. Rule utilitarianism takes into account the law and is concerned with fairness. A rule utilitarian seeks to benefit the most people, but through the fairness and most just means available. To add benefit to rule utilitarianism, it values justice and includes beneficence at the same time. Okay, let's take a look at the example. Previously, in deontological, we should to protect, but in utilitarianism, we do not shoot the intruder, but at the same time, we will try to find a way to protect our family. So basically, in utilitarianism, any act that can achieve happiness through consideration of all sides should be considered good. Let's talk about the third approach, which is the theory based on right. The third approach means that the rights established by society are protected and given the highest priority. Rights are considered to be ethically correct and valid since a large number of population endorse them. The society has to determine what right it wants to uphold and give to its citizens. In order for a society to determine what rights it wants to enact, it must decide what the society's goal and ethical priorities are. For example, in America, people have the right to choose their religion because this right is upheld in the Constitution. One of the goals of the founding fathers of America was to uphold this right to freedom of religion. And also, individuals may also bestow rights upon others if they have the ability and resources to do so. For example, my colleague Steven, he gave permission to his friend David to borrow his laptop for the afternoon. David, who was given the permission to borrow the laptop, now has a right to the laptop in the afternoon. Last but not least, ethic based on virtue. The virtue ethical theory judges a person by his or her character rather than by an action that may deviate from his or her normal behavior. It takes the person's moral, reputation, and motivation into account when rating an unusual and irregular behavior that is considered unethical. For example, if a person plagiarized a passage that was later detected by a peer, the peer who knows the person well will understand the person's character and will judge the friend accordingly. If the plagiarizer normally follows the rules and has good standing among his colleagues, the peer who encounters the plagiarized passage may be able to judge his friend more leniently. Conversely, a person who has a reputation for academic misconduct is more likely to be judged harshly for plagiarizing because of his or her consistent past of unethical behavior. So, I think I have to end our talks here. I think Miss Amy is calling me. See you later. Bye.
Hello everyone, it's Zani, one of the artists under Armani Entertainment. So for today, I will be talking about professional integrity and also professional accountability. So let's begin with professional integrity and begins with the definition, and then we'll move along to answering the question, how to ensure high professional integrity, and lastly we will go through an example in daily life on what you can do. So what are you waiting for? Go to the next slide. By definition, professional integrity is the practice of maintaining appropriate ethical behavior. It is the practice of showing strong adherence to moral and ethical principles and values such as honesty, honor, dependability, and trustworthiness. So people who behave with professional integrity generally uphold a moral standard of conduct, both in professional as well as personal endeavors. So these standards govern how professionals conduct themselves, their work ethic, and their communication practices. So professional integrity is what gives employees a reason to trust that leaders will place professional standards over their own self-interest. According to the National Institutes of Health United States, professional integrity means one would display and promote conduct and behaviors consistent with agency and government standards. So the key behaviors here, first we have maintains confidentiality of sensitive information, guards the handling of sensitive or high-risk information appropriately. Next we have is demonstrate sensitivity to surroundings and acts accordingly in conversation, demonstrates behaviors that are consistent with standards for professional and ethical conduct, follow up with a manager after identifying unethical conduct. So these are the first part of how to ensure high professional integrity as proposed by the National Institutes of Health United States. Now, let's continue with the other half of what can you do to ensure high professional integrity. First we have is to adhere to the standards of ethical conduct and compliance. Next we have is to maintain composure at all times, refrain from behavior that foster the appearance of conflict of interest, familiarize oneself with the pertinent rules and regulations that govern the area of responsibility. Next we have is apply rules and regulations in a consistent, unbiased manner, and this is very important. So by following all of these key behavior, the National Institutes of Health United States believe that one would eventually display and promote conduct and behavior, thus achieving high professional integrity. Your professional integrity is one of the most important parts of your teaching career. Integrity and professionalism is the glue that holds competent, strong schools together. So there is no doubt that you will encounter situations that make you question what you think you know about being a professional and a learning leader. But maintaining your integrity will make you a respected teacher, valued by colleagues, students, and their parents alike. Do the right thing. So as an educator, you will often be caught in a situation that challenges your patience, your goodwill, or your belief in what you are doing as a teacher. So we all want to do the right thing, but sadly, many teachers falls victim to a power complex. So especially with the lure of climbing the leadership ladder on the horizon. So by preventing yourself by getting caught up with the power and political issues within your school, and you can also check that you are doing the right thing. So by critically exploring the new strategies and everything that comes around, you can also remember the impact that this could have on your students. So what you can do is that you can remove yourself into situations where colleagues are being thrown under the bus, and you can do the right thing for them, rather than being stuck into lies, deception, and misconceptions. The second one is to believe in all of your students. So it might be a challenge, facing that group of Form 1s, on a Wednesday afternoon, but each student in that space is unique, gifted, and despite what they are displaying, they want to succeed. So they all have their own little quirks and characteristics. So look for the good nature in each and every one of them. So by being genuine and enthusiastic about your subjects, and by being genuine to them, you will gain their respect, along with engaging in your teaching as you guide them to achieve their potential. The last thing that you can do in your daily life is by taking responsibility. So by being trustworthy, being honest, and being authentic, these are key traits of true professional integrity. But also accepting your own mistakes without passing the blame to others takes courage within itself. So it's not always easy to take responsibility for things that happen, but it is the right thing to do. People with strong professional integrity choose to do the right thing, even when it's very hard. So taking responsibility, it's not a cue to beat yourself up when things don't go right, but it should be viewed as an opportunity to learn from the new experience to allow for rooms for personal growth. So you have heard me babbling about professional integrity. So now it's time for you to hear me talk about professional accountability, and the subtopic is still the same. I'm going to talk about the definition, and then I'll move on with the question: how to ensure high professional accountability, and lastly, we're going to take a look how you can what you can do in your daily life to reach professional accountability. So slide right now, okay? So Hunt views accountability as the readiness or preparedness to give an explanation or justification to relevant stakeholders for one's judgments, intentions, acts, and omissions when appropriate called upon to do so. It is readiness to have one's actions judged by others and, where appropriate, accept responsibility for errors, misjudgments, and negligence, and recognition for competence, thoroughness, excellence, and wisdom. Now, let's take a look in the professional context. Accountability is about answering to clients, colleagues, and other relevant professionals. They demand to give an account of one's judgments, acts, and omission arises from the nature of the professional client and the professional relationships. So, for communication professionals, accountability has more specific implications. So, in recent years, we have seen more practical and concrete interpretation of the concept of accountability by communication specialists. It is usually associated with responsiveness to the views of all stakeholders, which includes a willingness to explain, defend, and justify actions. So in terms of education, accountability in education is the answerability to one's actions in the educational system. So it is the state of being accountable to the stakeholders in education and accountable for the resources used in education. So this implies that accountability is a measure of the extent to which all available resources in a productive system are used for greater efficiency and productivity. Here's the question: how to ensure high professional accountability? So the first one is through self-criticism and ethical thinking. So as proposed by Lerner and Techlock, they concluded that self-criticism and ethical thinking will be selected most often when individuals are aware of the accountability conditions. Okay, so Lerner and Techlock had proposed that self-critical and ethical thinking is most likely to be activated when decision makers learn prior to forming any opinions that they will be accountable to an audience whose views are unknown, who are interested in accuracy, who are interested in processes rather than specific outcomes, those who are reasonably well informed, and also those who have a legitimate reason for inquiring into the reasons behind participants' judgments. So those are what Lerner and Techlock had concluded through for self-criticism and ethical thinking. In retrospect, the individuals are likely to engage in a wide assessment of their behaviors and judgments. So, Paulini found that when individuals were notified that they would be held accountable for their decisions regarding stereotype change and generalization, both information processing and judgment vigilance suddenly increased. So, this shows that when people are about to be held accountable, suddenly their attitude towards the approach suddenly changes. So that is why being accountable is really important in terms of ethics. Now, for the second one, we have the 5 ways to promote professional accountability. So this list of ways to promote professional accountability is originally written specifically to the nursing industry. However, the methods are still relevant as it is still in the professional work setting. So let's take a look and see how we can apply it. So this list is made possible by Dr. Rose O. Sherman, who is nationally known for her work in helping current and future nurse leaders to develop their leadership skills. The first step is to be clear about professional role responsibilities and organizational goals. So, when you are experiencing a leadership problem, go back to the basics as a starting point. do not assume that all professionals have a clear understanding of their role or what is expected of them. You might be surprised if you ask questions at a staff meeting about the role of an admin, for example, to see what answers might emerge, but more importantly, what does not as part of a role accountability. So for the second way is to provide direction about how work should be accomplished. So clarity in leadership can be one of the most difficult challenges. You may think you have been very clear about your expectations, only to learn that they were very misunderstood. And the third one we have is to develop clear standards and metrics against which professional performance is measured. So leaders need to seek commitment from staff and set standards for role expectations. It is often said that what is measured is what is done. So be clear about how role expectations will be measured. These expectations should not only include work performance but also interpersonal skills. Next we have is to hold professionals accountable for their behavior. So in the best of all possible world, professional staff would come to work and meet their performance expectations with little leadership intervention. Unfortunately, we are not living in the world and leaders do need to spend time coaching their staff. So early intervention with performance issues is key, as is providing follow-up support. And lastly we have is to build a culture of accountability. Building a culture of professional accountability is key to promoting personal accountability among staff. Staff know when good enough is the culture of an organization. Now we are at the last part of my presentation, examples in daily life. So in order to aid the process of accountability in education, administrators of the educational system should, among others, first, identify the goals and objectives of the educational system. 2. Determine the validity and relevance of such goals and objectives. Thirdly, we have to assess periodically how fully such goals and objectives have been achieved. Fourth, we have is to identify which factors assisted or hampered goal achievement in the system. And lastly, is to design strategies to improve the performance of the workers or staffs. Now, your role in schools, as adapted from Power School, firstly, you must create a culture of trust and responsibility. So, student accountability begins with establishing the right learning environment. So, a good place to start is by teaching and reinforcing the core competencies of social and emotional learning, in which students learn to understand and manage their emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, build and maintain positive relationships, and also make responsible choices. Secondly, you need to set high standards and clear expectations. So explain to students what you expect from them, and do not be afraid to set high goals. So for remote teaching, this means by setting clear due dates for assignments and doing daily attendance check-ins at a set of time. Thirdly, we have is to give students ownership of the learning process. So you can do this by asking students how they think distant learning can be improved. So when students are given a voice and a choice in their learning, student accountability often follows. So by giving students a say in how they will learn has been linked to gains in student effort and achievement, and this has been proven through past researchers. When I say researchers, there is a lot of papers that talk about this issue, students' accountability. Your fourth role is to help students learn to self-assess their work. Now, without a teacher in the room, students need very clear direction on how to assess their own work and progress. So students are more likely to assume responsibility for their learning if they are regularly reflecting on and assessing their own work. And a lot of studies had suggested this too. Next we have is to connect the classroom to the home. So by keeping families updated about distance learning schedules and activities, expectations cannot be understated. So parents and guardians can have a significant effect on their children's learning. So when they take an active role in monitoring their children's assignments and progress, students tend to take more responsibility for their learning and are more likely to stay on track. So for your last role in schools, you need to have communication IT support for students and families. So as tech savvy as students may be these days, issues will still arise when shifting to distance learning. So offering easily accessible IT support for students and families would totally help them to fix problems fast and get back to learning and working. So make sure they know that whether they believe the problem is on your end or theirs, your school or district is there to support them.
Hello, my name is NADZIRA and I work as a janitor at AIMAN Entertainment. So earlier, I heard the famous celebrity AIMAN talks about professional integrity. So what happens if a person does not adhere to the values of integrity? What will happen if you do not have a strong moral compass? Let me tell you a dark secret of a company only a janitor would know. People who lack integrity change easily when they are given power. So they would misuse and abuse their power and authority. Let me tell you what happens if power falls into the wrong hands in a professional setting. So this is definitely an issue of a person's integrity. Now let's try to understand this issue, okay? So we can see what is wrong and think of the solutions together. So in the first section, I'll explain about these people who think they are self-entitled. So they feel comfortable breaching integrity even when they are not in a stressful situation. Next, we'll see what are the forms people can commit power abuse. Keep in mind that these red flags are the issue of integrity in the workplace themselves. Self-entitlement. Why people abuse their power? First one, I think it originates from the person itself. Psychological studies in behavioral trends by Fanti and Kimanis in 2012 indicated that narcissism is rising. Approximately 70% of students today score higher on narcissistic scales than 30 years ago. Research has found that narcissism inversely correlates to empathy. The higher the score on the scale of narcissism, the lower the empathy exhibited. Narcissistic individuals do not consider the pain they inflict on others, and they do not care about others' perception of it. As narcissistic behavior increases, we may see increases in power abuse cases. This relates to self-entitlement because in a research by a psychology professor from University of California explained that two-thirds of the time a person in a position of power who unconsciously feel entitled to take more of the sweets, plus who's more likely to blaze through a pedestrian zone on the road and think that their time is more important than the safety of other pedestrians. It's people who drive higher power and wealthier cars. Another reason to attack power abuse is when they have the wrong mindset. I've heard of the term don't be comfortable with average. Great is good, yes, but if you sacrifice your morality and integrity for it, then maybe the decision should be considered, because you will be a corporate psychopath who manipulates lies and cheats to make money without regards to the damage your actions cause. Hence, why not change the greed mindset for passion, which is a feeling of intense enthusiasm towards or compelling desire for something. It is a healthier drive and motivation. Plus, you will less likely commit power abuse because the issue of low integrity is a choice. You can choose to be truthful and fair. Those with money or position of power often have greater access to lawyers. The power abusers are often in a position to control legal outcomes. As a result, these cases often go unreported, undetected, and unchallenged because the victim feels that the threat of action could be worse than the original form of abuse. So this creates a vicious cycle where the perpetrators feel that they are getting away with the crime and they are empowered to continue their abusive behavior. So, should we keep quiet about power abuse? No, because that would make you a silent supporter. If you see the red flags of power abuse committed by your peers or your organizational leaders, do not enable the abuser by being complicit in your silence. The silent witness is as guilty as the perpetrators because you allow psychological torture in the workplace to continue. So the enablers are also the perpetrators of this issue. So remember, if the vicious cycle is not stopped, logically, you may become the next victim of power abuse. So now let's look at this example if power falls into the wrong hands. If you haven't heard about the Stanford prison experiment, this is a real experiment and there's also a movie about it. So what power does is that it liberates the true self to emerge. Most of us walk around with kind of social norms and we work in groups that exert all pressures on us to conform. So once you get into a position of power, then you can be whoever you are. I think all of you have heard of the overused quote, give a man a mask and he will show his true face, right? So this is the exact scenario for the guards. One of them even said, acting authoritatively can be fun. Power can be a great pleasure. Even though it is just a role play, they have abused their power and caused harm to those acting as prisoners. So be careful to whom you give your power, okay? So now, how to identify red flags and what is considered power abuse? So this is the key to find a solution for this issue. And then you can take appropriate action once you identify these problems in the workplace. So the first one is when leaders abuse powers for personal gain. For example, using a corporate vehicle to run personal errands or using a corporate discount to make personal purchases, which might be a minor breach to some, but for more serious violations could include nepotism, which means giving a high level and high paying job to an unqualified friends or family member. And lastly, using a position of authority to make illicit payment or bribe in exchange for what they want. Any form of biases, favoritism, and discrimination due to race, religion, gender, or ability is significant enough to be reported. Habits such as giving an individual a poor performance review based on personal dislike rather than accurate performance measurement is an example of misuse of power. Moreover, Kaur in 2012 stated that indecent or intimidating sexual behavior is very common in Malaysia along with physical and verbal bullying. Abuse of power can also be found in a misuse of companies' human and financial resources. For example, assigning tasks to unqualified individuals or regularly authorizing unnecessary overtime can be viewed as misguiding utilization of power. I think everyone who works would understand this pain. Sometimes the CEO asks me to work overtime but do not pay me by the hour I work overtime. So then, misusing the financial resources such as spending above pre-approved budgetary limitations due to ego or lack of planning. Also, illegal financial exploitation. They think they can be sneaky and grab some cash from the project Uh, this is a very big issue regarding your integrity as a leader. And last but not least, inappropriate delegation. A leader that regularly delegates tasks and responsibilities of his own to his underlings may be viewed as showing an abuse of authoritative power. A leader using his approach may find his decisions allow him to deflect blame to the other member if a task or responsibility is not carried out appropriately, while accepting credit for a positive outcome if the delegated tasks are handled appropriately. Sometimes they require employees to perform unusual tasks, that is, maybe running errands that is not their specialty or tasks that makes them uncomfortable. Okay, that is all for me. Now I have to go to work. Thank you.
Hello, magandang umaga sa inyong lahat. Kamusta ka? Ang pangalan ko ay si AFIFAH. I am the manager of MIZA. I origin from Philippines, pero I can talk in English. This is just my accent. Okay lang ha. Now that I have some time while AIMAN group meeting, let's now talk about issues in work ethics. You know, as a manager, there is quite a lot of issues I face here. Pero it won't take long, I promise. The first issues in work ethics that I will cover is the mistreatment towards disabled worker. As you guys can see on the screen, the headline are all about disabled person being mistreated in their workplace. Kakak kecewa adik kurang upaya dibuli dan dipukulkan sekerja. Walaupun dah pakai uniform khas, staff OKU ditengking sebab tak dengar customer. Suka cari kerja kerana diri OKU. This is really bad. We should actually assist disabled person and help them when they are facing issues, not underestimate, use them, or bullying them. Do you want to know what is the effect of mistreatment towards disabled worker? The first effect of mistreatment towards disabled person is the disabled person will be having low self-esteem because people around them keep underestimate them just because they are disabled and cannot do things normally. The next one, the rate of unemployment of OKU will be increasing. This is because they feel like they don't belong to where they are working at, and they might also feel that they don't belong in the society. This is a huge issue that needs to be considered, and we need to be inclusive by including disabled workers in our life too. All in all, they are human, and they didn't ask to be born the way they are, right? And lastly, when OKU's welfare is neglected, the person might experience depression due to high pressure they had in life. It is so sad to even imagine this to happen. As a human, the little that we can do is to offer help when you encounter OKU person facing issues. If you know any OKU around you, you can approach them and ask them on what you can do to help them. Do know that we all are struggling differently. Whatever you are facing at the moment, no matter how bad is your day, please remember to always treat people nicely. The second issues on work ethics is oversharing on social media. Did you guys realize that teacher posting students' picture on social media is now kind of being a norm, kind of becoming a norm now? Just go to Facebook page or Instagram page of a teacher and you can find they post their students' picture there. I really hope that everyone knows it is wrong for us to upload picture of children or students at the age of below 18 without consent. You guys can refer to Acta 2006. As a future educator, we should always aware of our students' right. We should always be careful of our action and we should not be doing things at our own will. Because as a teacher, we are the role model of our students. So be a good one. The third issue here is teacher versus students. The issue here is the syllabus in school is quite heavy. As you guys can see in the screen, primary school students are required to learn 15 subjects in a year. Can you imagine that? For your information, this post is screenshotted from a teacher, so it is a reliable source. This is what the kids are facing right now.
With the number of subjects, we can imagine the exhaustion, the tiredness, the weariness that the students are experiencing. Plus, the syllabus is not easy. As you guys can see on the other headline, quantum physics, which is a course that being offered in a university, were taught in Form 5. I feel like it is really ridiculous for teaching students with heavy syllabus when they are in the phase of growing up. It feels like the syllabus only focuses on the academic but not on their development on mentals or physically. With the issues that being mentioned just now, sometimes the students did not able to receive the lesson effectively because they are tired, although the teacher tried their best to convey the lesson. And sometimes the lesson just not successfully delivered, and teachers are exhausted from that. I think the higher ups should reconsider teachers' workload and the current syllabus and make it balanced academically, spiritually, and physically. Oh my god, Aiman is back. I think he's calling for me. That is all for now. Maraming salamat po for listening. Bye!
Well, hello, it is me again, your CEO. Our team covered quite various subtopics and issues, right? So I hope that all the inputs will help us to be more ethical than before, to ensure positive attributes lead by positive values in a positive environment. And it is hoped that through this sharing, we are more aware of the importance of ethics, whatever the types, in order for us to improve and be ethically professional. Alright, all these works are tiring me out, so maybe I need a co-CEO or something? Well, don't forget to join in on the activity and grab the chance to be my co-CEO. I guess that concludes our presentation, our sharing on work and professional ethics. On behalf of Harmony Entertainment, I apologize for any inconvenience and thank you for staying till the end. Till next time!